Hi, welcome to Overthinking Entrepreneur. I'm Megan, and I've had a successful online business for a few years now, and I think I overthought probably about 90% of my decisions along the way. Honestly, I just overthought whether I should say 90% or pretty much every decision in this intro. So if you find that relatable, you are definitely in the right place. In this podcast, I will help you get out of overthinking and into action so that your online business can finally start growing. Are you doing your best? That's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. I think that this particular phrasing is really important and something that I want to encourage you to adopt into your mindset and your business in two different kind of distinct ways, but equally as important. And so instead of trying to speak cryptically and figure out how I can word this, let's just dive right in, because I think that this is something that a lot of you probably need to hear. It's a shift that I made and that I sometimes still have to continue to remind myself to make. And like I said, in two different directions that I think are really important. So the first one is, are you doing your best when it comes to the circumstances of your life and what you have going on right now? I see so many people who are living their business by all these rules or wanting strict, rigid answers to what they need to be doing. Some of the questions that I get asked all the time: how many times should I be posting? How many posts do I need to make about my launch? How many days should I wait before I message someone? How many times do I have to message someone before I can bring up my business? And if you'll notice, the common theme is we want the strict, rigid answers and the simple answers to these questions. And this is just fundamentally different from the way that I like to run my business. And that's why I sometimes struggle with these type of questions. And it's not that I don't want to answer them. It's that I think there is no blanket one-size-fits-all answer to these questions. And even within people, some of you should post 6 times. Some of you should post 26 times. It just, it depends. But even within that, I don't think that you need to put yourself on these strict numbers-based rules like a lot of you are trying to do, because the reality is each week in your life is a little bit different. Maybe not every single week, but things change. Days are different, weeks are different, things happen, and trying to lock yourself into these numbers and these exact things that you do every single day, every single week, I think it's a recipe for inconsistency. And I think a lot of times you come up with it because you say, okay, I am not showing up the way that I want to, and so I need a plan. I know that I need a schedule. I know that I need things in place to make sure that I follow through. And I get it. I understand that, just winging it or having no plan in place at all, a lot of times you don't do much of anything. And trust me, I'm the same way. But I think trying to lock yourself into these strict schedules is also sometimes overcorrecting in the opposite direction, to where you're also making it hard for you to show up and follow through consistently. So this week, when I happen to be recording this episode, my husband just started a new job today, and my schedule is going to have to change a lot because of it. In a good way for the most part, but it also means that I'm going to have less time to work. The hours that I can work are changing. Things are just different this week than they were last week, than they were for the last 3 months, than they were for, however long. And I think that we need to remember that your life is always going to be changing. And even when you don't have a major event, even when no one in your family starts a new job or nothing major has happened, things just aren't the same from week to week. Some weeks I am so incredibly excited about my business and so inspired and so many ideas, and all I want to do is get to work. Some weeks I'm feeling a little bit fried and I don't have as many ideas, or there's a lot on my plate and I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed and I'm not as excited to sit down and work. Some weeks I have a lot of babysitters coming to hang with my toddler and I have more time available. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes my husband has plans and I end up having to watch my son more than I normally would, and these are all just random examples, but life doesn't look the same every single week. And so trying to come up with this strict schedule for yourself, you're doing it under the assumption that you're going to do the exact same things every week. And there are certain things that I do pretty much without fail. I think that there's nuance here. There's certain things that just need done and that's it. And you just kind of have to figure it out. But I think that I have benefited a lot from not focusing on things like that. Not saying I have to post this many times a week, or I have to message someone after this many days, or I have to, I think what happens, especially for those of us that are overthinkers, we get into our head that It has to happen in this exact way. And if it doesn't, now we consider it a failure. Or now we scrap the whole week. Or now we say, well, I'm not even going to bother. I didn't follow up after 2 weeks. Now it's been 3 weeks and I feel like that's too long. So I'm just not going to bother. And it's like, no, it would still benefit you to follow up with someone right now. It's still worth doing. So I understand that this is going to be a little bit different for each of us. It just depends on your personality and your lifestyle and goals. And a lot of different things go into this. But I've seen a lot of people with really great intentions ask these kind of questions. And I hope this isn't coming across as me like making fun of you for thinking this way, because I thought this way too. It's not in a judgment way that I'm saying this whatsoever. It's just that I think you're asking the wrong questions. I think that when we set out and we say, how many times do I have to post? Or how do I have to do that? Or what's the exact number of when it becomes okay? It just doesn't work that way. There's so many different gray areas and there's so many different factors that go into any question like that. And so I think what you want to do instead is think about, how can I do my best this week or this day or with what I have going on right now? So while I totally support setting a bare minimum and setting goals, I think that sometimes we set these really ambitious goals, or we do what we think we're supposed to do, and then we can't keep up with it, and then we throw it all out and we say, well, never mind. It's kind of like that idea of, and to be perfectly honest with you, this is an area where I struggle, so I'm just going to be honest with you for a minute here, but the idea of, let's say that you're trying to eat healthier, and then you go somewhere and you end up having pizza. There was free pizza somewhere you went and you were like, oh man, I really want the free pizza, and you eat it and then you say, well, okay, I already ate the pizza today, so I think for dinner I'm going to have McDonald's and also ice cream, and you know what, maybe I should also have a late night grilled cheese, and I'll start over tomorrow. And it's this all or nothing mentality that, clearly it's fine. You had pizza for lunch. It is what it is. You would still be better served to stick to your plan for dinner instead of saying, forget it, I'll try again tomorrow. And this is what a lot of people are doing with their business. They're setting these really strict things that they have to do, and then when they can't do it because life happens, and life always happens, then they say, well, never mind, I'll try again later, like that wasn't worth it. And it just sometimes makes you feel like a failure when you're not. Or sometimes you've done a lot, but you didn't quite do everything, or you didn't do it exactly the way that you wanted. And now again, you've decided you're a failure, but actually you're doing a lot. And sometimes we all need that step back. Me too. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I've reached a certain level of success in my business where people are depending on me and people are watching me, and if I drop a ball somewhere, I could be letting someone down, and it makes it hard. And so I also need to take that step back and say, okay, let's look at everything that I did in the past month, and let me just be proud of myself. Instead of focusing on what I didn't do or what's not perfect, did you show up and do the best that you could? Yes, I did. And that has to be enough. So I'm kind of talking in circles here, but what I want you to take away from this is doing your best looks different person to person. Doing your best looks different week to week, month to month, day to day. There's so many things, and we look at other people and we try and compare ourselves to what someone else is doing, but that's not fair. Or we look at what we were doing, like right now we're in a transition in my household while we adjust to my husband's new schedule. It is not fair for me to expect myself to do the same things this week, which also happens to be right after the time change, and also while my poor son is getting all 4 of his 2-year molars early at the same time. So me expecting that I can be as productive this week as I could have been a few weeks ago when none of that was going on, that's unfair. So this is why I struggle to answer that question when, if you've ever asked me a question like that, how many times or how should I do this? And you wanted me to just tell you exactly what to do. You probably got an answer back from me that was like, well, it depends. And you're probably like, will you just tell me? This is why I say that. It's because I just don't think life works that way. And I just don't think, at least the type of people that I work with, that's not how we operate. And when you try and plug yourself into that kind of system, you're setting yourself up for failure. And that is not what I want for you. So what I want you to ask yourself instead is, am I doing my best? And remember that your best is going to look differently depending on what you have going on. If you were super sick, your best looks very different than when you had a great night's sleep. When you are brand new in your business, doing your best looks a little bit different than when you are 2 years into your business. So I just want you to focus on doing your own best, not comparing yourself to other people or not thinking that it has to look exactly the same every day, every week, every month. Are you doing your best with what you have going on right now, with the mental capacity that you have right now for creativity? And this part is tricky, especially if you've never done this kind of work before. So it's not like I can just sit down at my computer and just create an idea. I need that mental energy. I need that creative energy. I need that capacity to be able to think and create in the way that I want to. There are certain things that I can do in my business that just, that I can just power through no matter how I'm feeling, but not all of them. And so if you are dealing with a really stressful or emotional situation in your personal life, your capacity for creating is not going to be the same as it is when you're in a great mood and having a great day. It just fluctuates, and that's normal. And I just want you to stop putting that pressure on yourself. And instead of striving for doing the same thing every week, no matter what, instead, I want you to be more compassionate with yourself and just ask, am I doing my best? And that's enough. And if you're not, what can you do? How can you show up and do your best? And you know what that looks like. No one else does. You know what doing your best looks like. Sometimes there's things that you're going through that no one else has any idea. There have been times that I was massively struggling behind the scenes, and people didn't know that because it was something that I wasn't ready to talk about yet. And so only you know that. And try to just remember that other people don't know what's going on. And as long as you know that you're doing your best, that is enough. Okay? Now, on the flip side of this, and I know these things are almost going to seem like they conflict, but I don't think they do. I hope that the way that I explain it will make them click for you, or that you interpret this yourself. Just because this is how I see it does not mean that this has to be how you see it. A good example of this is the term balance. I like the term balance when I think about balancing my life and my work, but to me, balance just means I'm giving the amount of time to each thing that I want to give it. It does not mean that they have to be equal. I think having this idea, and I guess balance implies that they're balanced. So maybe I need to just choose a different term for this. But if you ever hear me talk about balancing, I do not mean equal. Family and business do not have to be equal, and trying to create that is probably going to make you go crazy. So for me, when I say balance, I just mean that I'm able to do both things and do them the way that I want to be doing them, not that they are completely equal. So this might be something similar for you, where the way that I explain this, you say, yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from, but here's my definition and this is what works for me. That's perfect. Just because I see it this way doesn't mean that you have to. But what I also want you to think about is, are you doing your best when it comes to your business, or are you just going through the motions? Because I see a lot of people asking, what's the fastest way to do this? What's the easiest way to do this? How can I make this happen? Or, I tried this once and it isn't exploding with success. Like, what's going on? And I think we get really hung up on what's working. We get really hung up on comparing ourselves to other people. We get really hung up on whether we're doing this right. And this one's tricky for those of us overthinkers who we just want to do things right. But what happens is you hold yourself back stressing over how to do it right, or how someone else is doing it, or what works. And instead, I want you to just do your best. Just give it your all. Put your whole heart into it. I don't want to say that I don't do this with anything, because I definitely do. And there's plenty of things that I don't even take on if I know that it's just not something I'm excited about. But when I show up, like if I create a challenge, I put hours into that challenge. If I create, what you see might be a simple PDF that's for sale in my shop for $10. I put a lot of hours into that. Anything that I put out into the world, I have really thought about it, because the quality of my work, my reputation, it matters to me. It makes a big difference. And so I am always trying to put out my best work. I don't just say, and sometimes I think to myself, like, man, I wish that I could just like slap something together and call it a day, because I spend a lot of time trying to do my best and trying to make things as good as I can. But I think the fact that I still have a lot of people who have been in my membership for years. We just celebrated the 5-year anniversary of my free Facebook group. Yay! Happy anniversary, Dynamite Entrepreneurs. I opened it 5 years ago last Friday. which I didn't even realize. I randomly got inspired to run a sale on some group resources. And when I was writing an email, I was like, when did I open this group again? Because I was trying to say I've had my group for 5 years. Or I don't know. I can never remember what year. So I went to check, and it turns out the day that I had decided I was going to start the sale was the 5-year anniversary, which was just like the weirdest. How did that happen? But the fact that there's still so many people active in that group who were founding members, meaning they joined right within the first 2 days when the group opened, and they're still active. I don't want to say that no one else has that. There are definitely people that have a loyal audience, but there's also people that don't. And I think part of the reason I've had people who have been with me for so long is because I do my best. I really care about what I'm doing, and I put a lot of hard work into it. And so I see a lot of people who are looking for the shortcuts, looking for the secret, looking for how can I make this happen faster, or how can I put less effort into this? And I think that's the wrong mindset. And I think that's probably why you're struggling as an entrepreneur, if you are struggling as an entrepreneur. Instead of thinking, how can I cut corners and do this easy? What if you put your whole heart into it? What if you did your best? What if you gave it everything that you had? What if you really focused on making it incredible? Instead of stressing over the numbers and the sales not coming in and the things not growing the way that you want them to, and then looking outwardly and saying, well, what are they doing? Why is their group growing? But mine isn't. I don't understand. And we're comparing, and then we're obsessing. And it's like, what if you just made your group amazing? What if you took all of that mental energy and that worry and that stress and that overthinking, and you just channeled it into, how can I overthink and make this the best darn group I could possibly have? Or whatever. It doesn't have to be a group. But do you see the difference? Do you see how we're constantly worrying about what other people are doing? We're constantly comparing ourselves. And I understand if what you're doing isn't working and it seems like someone else is working, what they're doing is working, it's really easy to look and say, well, what are they doing that I'm not? And how do I start doing what they're doing? Because I want this to be working, and I understand that. But I think what happens is a lot of people are kind of doing the bare minimum, kind of looking at what other people are doing, and not really giving it their all, not really doing their best. So this could be things like copying and pasting other people's posts because it's too hard. Or here's an example of something that a lot of people that have been kind of in my world for a few years, I've heard say, I just don't know who my ideal client is, or I just don't understand what the benefit is of my product, or I don't know how to do that, or that's too hard, or okay, I get it, but I need you to give it your best shot. I need you to just try and figure it out and do your best instead of throwing up your arms every time it gets hard or saying, well, I just don't know, or, someone tell me what to do. I'm not sure. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you why your customers will love the thing that you sell. Only you can. And it has to start with you. It has to come from you. It's possible to grow a business that is just specifically to make money. But if you're here with me and my audience, that's not you. Yes, there are people who spot a place they can make money. I actually just really heard about this pretty disturbing scheme. I guess I don't want to get too into it because I don't have all the details and I don't want to be spreading gossip. But on Reddit, does Reddit count as social media? I don't know. It's kind of social media, but everything is so anonymous. But on Reddit, when there are these support groups for people who are pregnant and have the same due date, the same month. I joined mine, and mine is still active, even though our kids are approaching 2 already, which seems crazy. And it's such a great source of support. But because there's these groups, and there's now some businesses that are trying to create their own groups like this and not letting people know that it's run by a business, and then basically trying to prey on the fears and target these expecting moms and sell them stuff. And I'm like, what in the world? That to me just seems so gross. So to me, that's an example of where you're trying to run a business that isn't your own experience. It's not born from passion. It's born from, I want to try and make money. And so, yes, some people do succeed this way. I'm not saying that you can't, but if that's your goal, I'm definitely not the right mentor for you. This is probably not the right podcast for you. So instead of thinking what can I do? How can I trick people into signing up? How can I convince people to sign up? Instead, I want you to just really think from your heart. Why do you love the thing that you sell? What was it for you? So if it's a product that you personally use, why do you love it? And if you're having a hard time narrowing down your ideal client and why they might love the product or the service or whatever it is that you sell, I want you to really take a step back and ask yourself, what is it for me? Because there's so many different reasons and so many different potential ideal clients and benefits, pretty much anything. No matter what you sell, there's a lot of different people that you could sell it to and a lot of different reasons why they should want it. But what you need to hone in on is what that is for you, not what all the possible options are. Why do you love it? What's your story? How did it help you? When do you reach for this thing? Because that's when you're going to be able to effectively communicate it to your audience, when they're people who are the same as you. I see people all the time saying like, oh, I need to do all this market research. And like, I'm not dismissing market research. I think it's really important to make sure, especially if you're going to put a lot of time and effort into developing something, to make sure that people want it. But when people say to me, well, I have no idea what my people are struggling with, or I have no idea why they might want my thing, I'm like, okay, we need to back up a second here, because this all needs to come from you. This all needs to be based on why you're doing it. I know what my audience needs because they're me. They're me back in the day. What did I need to know? What would have helped me? I don't feel like I need to ask a lot of questions or really dig deep or like try and interview people about what they need help with. If I felt that way, I would think I was on the wrong track with my ideal client. And I hope that's coming across the way that I want it to, because I understand this can be tricky, and I understand, some guidance can be really helpful here, but it needs to come from you deep down, and it needs to be your best, not someone else's. So I think we worry so much about what other people think, what other people want, what other people might need. What did you need? Create that, because the more that you are driven from passion and purpose and really digging deep into what would have helped you and the way that you want to help other people, the easier everything is going to get. But instead, we look left and we look right and we say, well, what might this person want? And then we say, hey, mom, what would you want? Hey, sister, what would you want? Hey, aunt, what about you? Hey, random people in this Facebook group who've never met me, what would you want? And we're turning outward and we're like handing the power over to all these other people who probably aren't going to buy from you no matter what. I actually just read a really interesting perspective on this, and I've seen it myself, and I hadn't been able to put it into words how to explain what goes on. But have you ever asked someone if they might be interested in something and they'll say, yeah, that sounds great, I could use that, or yeah, I would want that. And then you actually say, okay, here it is, are you ready to buy it? And no one actually buys it when it comes to putting real money on the line. It's because they want to be likable. Many of them are people pleasers, and so they want to give you the answer that you want to hear, and they want to say, yeah, that sounds great, but they don't necessarily mean that they would be committing to buy it. And so what happens is, a lot of times we look at other people, we look at what they say they might want, we're trying to guess, we're trying to ask all these questions, we're trying to figure things out. And then what we end up creating, no one wants. And you don't feel that excited by it either, because you're just doing what you think that you should be doing, and you're doing what you think other people want. Instead, I want you to look inward, and I want you to ask yourself, I want you to think about when you were your own ideal client. And if you've never been your own ideal client, you might be headed in the wrong direction. You don't have to currently be having the struggle, but if you have never been your own ideal client, then you might be trying to sell to people that you don't fully understand. And when you don't fully understand what they're going through, that makes it really hard to figure out what kind of content's going to grab their attention. So you might need to shift directions and say, okay, what did I need? How did this impact me? And instead of trying, I think a lot of this comes from good intentions. Like, okay, well, I use this thing in way number 1, but there's also way number 2 and way number 3. And I don't want the people who could use number 2 and number 3 to miss out. So I think I should be talking about all of this stuff. But then you spread yourself so thin, your message is unclear, you don't have a strong overall thing that you help people with, or a clear idea of who you help and what that is, and then your business goes nowhere. So instead, I want you to think about you, your own experiences, and who is out there like you that needs the product or the service in the same way that you did, and then show up. And then I want you to create things for yourself. So what would have helped you when you were really in the thick of the struggle, or you couldn't find what it was that you were looking for? What would have helped you? What did you need to know? What video would you have loved to watch? What group would you have loved to join? Like, really, instead of trying to do the bare minimum or trying to think about what other people might want, I want you to look inward and say, what did I need? How can I create my best work? How can I do something that's amazing and something that's above and beyond? And guess what? Going above and beyond, that's how you stand out. There's so many people doing the bare minimum and so many people doing the same thing. When you look at what other people are doing and you try and be like them because it's working, first of all, it's probably not going to work for you like it did for them because it's not authentic to you. It's not you. It's not your best. It's someone else's best that you're trying to adapt, but you just kind of become like a knockoff version of them, right? So that person is already there. That already exists. That message is already out there. That content is already out there. That product is already out there. What can you create that's unique to you, that is your best, not someone else's? So I hope this makes sense. Like I said, I completely understand where this struggle comes from, and it's a struggle that I've had, and it's a struggle that I'm sure I will continue to have, and it's really easy to look left and look right and look at what other people are doing, and I get it. But I want you to stop trying to be like other people, and I want you to stop trying to blend in. And instead, I want you to stand out. I want you to be you and be so you and give it your best work and do everything that you can above and beyond so that you can look back and say, yeah, I really did give that my best. So your action step for this week, I want you to look back on the past 3 months in your business. And I want you to be really brutally honest. Now, I don't want you to beat yourself up. That's not what I mean here. But I want you to be very honest and say, have I been doing my best work? Have I been showing up as my best me with my best ideas and really giving it my all? Or am I just looking what other people are doing and doing what I think that I should be doing? Or, kind of just calling it good enough, getting the bare minimum out there, or, whatever that may be. So have you been doing your best work? Because I bet your best work is really awesome. And I bet when you truly show up and commit to something that you can create some really amazing stuff. And when you do that, you'll probably be amazed at the results that come. Instead of stressing over the perfect strategy and, oh no, this stopped working and how do I outrun this change and what do I do about this and what do I do about that? And I keep hearing this and, we drive ourselves nuts. Instead, just do your best. Give it your best, whatever that best is on any given day, week, or month, but really give it your best and tell me that your business doesn't look different a year from now. I hope this episode inspires you to go take action on something you have been overthinking. As much as I wish you could, you cannot think your way to success, so promise me you're going to go take some action today. Head over to overthinkingentrepreneur.com to find all the cool stuff I've made for you over the years, like my free guide to getting more social media engagement and my Facebook group, Dynamite Entrepreneurs, which has a free course on social media basics.